Welcome to our group replication presentation. So Hackenberg in 2018 stated that token reinforcement or token economies consists of a set of contingencies that involve the use of conditioned reinforcers. So token economies have been experimented with since the 1930s and have been implemented in applied settings since the 1960s. Token economies have been immensely effective in a wide range of targeted behaviors. Some of the behaviors include increased work productivity in the classroom setting, maximize effective management skills in group homes. And then token reinforcement systems have also been applied in various settings like hospitals, institutions, businesses, and other places like that. A study conducted by Daminati Sethi in 2015 found that token reinforcement was used to decrease drooling in children with cerebral palsy. They found a significant decrease in drooling when they implemented token reinforcement interventions. So there was also Andrew Allstott in 2011 who conducted a study that used token economy interventions to improve the overhand throw of children in second grade in the physical education class. Participants increased their overhand throw percentages by using a token reinforcement system. Token economies work for multiple years in many different age groups. Token economies have been shown to reduce challenging behaviors in children with autism, as seen in the study by Carnett in 2014. But this intervention does not only work with children with autism, but it also works with many other children and older people as well to change the behavior. There was a study by Rebecca, Lindsay, and Moffett in 2009 where they changed behavior with children with cystic fibrosis and found that token economies were very effective in increasing the exercise with those children. The purpose of our project was to replicate a behavior change research article. We chose the study conducted by Krenz, Miltenberger, and Valbu in 2016 to replicate. We examined if a token economy would increase the distance that one would travel. So our participants for this replication study were 3 female participants who ranged in ages 24 to 35 and who did not display any physical disabilities. So the first one is me. I'm Chantal, 26 years old. I'm a senior ABA therapist from Illinois. I engaged prior to the study a moderate amount of physical activity on average for about 1.5 hours a day for 5 days a week.
The second participant was me. I'm Rachel. I am a 35-year-old. I work as a long-term disability analyst in Iowa. I engaged in moderate physical activity as well prior to the study, about an average of an hour a day, 5 days a week.
Hi guys, my name is Amy. I am 24 years old. I am a registered line technician in an ABA clinic in Louisiana. And before the study, I would engage in about an hour of physical activity, so I would consider that moderate.
So our settings were different since we're all in different parts of the United States. We were able to use either our personal treadmills that were located within our homes or the treadmills that were located within local gyms. So I used a treadmill that was in a local gym, and then Rachel and Amy used their own personal treadmill.
As far as materials in our study, treadmills, of course, were kind of the first big point. We did use the treadmills to track distance and the time each participant spent walking. We also used our cell phones to capture the distance and the time walked via a photo, and then we shared the photo and that data with the other participants. We also used our phones to provide each other with verbal praise after completion and just kind of keeping each other motivated after each walking session. We did also share an Excel spreadsheet that we provided our collected data on. We each did input our own individual data after our 1-hour session, and we shared that on Google Docs with the other participants. We defined walking as making forward momentum with the feet from a standing position with or without assistive devices that increased the distance from each activity at a moderate speed, so 2 to 3 miles per hour. An example of walking is walking from the front door of the house to the mailbox at the end of the road at 2.5 miles per hour, or walking on a treadmill with a continuously moving belt at 2.5 miles per hour. Non-examples of walking would be running, skipping, or jumping from one place to another from a standing position that increased the distance from one place to another. All participants collected our own data using the built-in timer and distance monitors in the treadmill. We did take a picture of the treadmill screen with the camera on our phones after each session to provide for accountability. And then, of course, sent that picture through a text message to the other participants, and then updated that Excel spreadsheet that was shared on Google Docs. So that showed all of our individual data, the time, the distance walked for each session, etc. Our study was done based on an AB design, and we use that to determine the effect of token reinforcement on our distance walk. In regards to baseline and treatment phases, in our replication of the study, we recorded the distance walked for 5 days for the first and third week, 7 days each, in order to determine a baseline for our study. And each member walked for a maximum of 1 hour a day while tracking that distance walked by using the built-in timer and distance tracking within the treadmill. Members were able to take breaks during the 1 hour of walking, but the timer would continue to run and the distance accumulation should stop. Participants were able to slow down the speed they were walking if they became tired. The distance recorded by each member served as the baseline for the study, and no tokens of reinforcement were earned during those baseline phases. Participants each created a list of reinforcing items, either an edible or a tangible item that we found as reinforcing or motivating. And we did that based on using the same preference assessment as was used in the original study. We each took this preference assessment 3 times with a minimum of 5 minutes between each assessment. During the intervention phase of the study, each participant used the same treadmill they had used in the baseline phase. We started walking on the treadmill for 1 hour. After walking for 1 hour, we tracked the distance traveled by taking a picture of the treadmill and sharing the results with the other participants via a text message. Participants then put our own data into the shared Excel document on Google Docs. Participants received a token for each half mile completed within that 1 hour period. Participants were able to trade in the total collected tokens at the end of the study for a prize or reinforcement. And that was, again, determined based on our preference assessments completed. The more tokens we completed, the larger reinforcement received upon completion.
The dependent variable in a replication study was the number of half miles each participant completed in 1 hour's time. The distance was measured on the built-in screen on each participant's treadmill. After walking for 1 hour, each participant divided their completed distance by 0.5. The result was the number of half miles completed within the hour. To ensure inter-server agreement throughout the study, all participants followed the same protocol. As defined in the baseline and intervention section, each participant walked on a treadmill and used the machine's built-in screen to provide distance and time walked. Each participant also completed the same preference assessment to determine appropriate individual reinforcers and provided individual data to the group to account for reliability and to ensure participation. Since all participants were physically located in different areas, a second observer was not available to physically monitor participants while walking. To ensure IOA and accountability, each participant walked on a treadmill and took a picture of the machine screen showing distance and time walked. These pictures then were provided to the group's participants to account for IOA. The consistency of our study was based on keeping the duration of each session to 1 hour on 5 separate days per week. We also monitor the results and send each other the machine's information to keep accurate and true valid integrity of each intervention. Some of our results, we're going to start off with Rachel's. So Rachel on her baseline walked at 2.5, and then in her intervention 1, second baseline, and intervention 2, she walked at 3 miles per hour for an hour each day. So as we can see, her results were pretty consistent. In the bottom, we can see her average for her baseline was a 2.54. Her range was 2.49 to 2.64. Her intervention average was a 3.5. Her range was a 3.4 to a 3.5. Her baseline 2 average was a 3.5. Her range was a 3.5 to a 3.516. Her intervention 2 consisted of an average of a 3.2, and her range was a 3.4 to a 3.52. Secondly, we have Chantel's graph. So she has a baseline 1, token reinforcement, baseline 2, and token reinforcement 2. On the bottom, we can see her average and her range. For her baseline, it was a 0 to a 6.9. Her average was a 3.18. Her token reinforcement intervention 1 was a 0 to 6 with an average of a 4.5. Her baseline is a 0 with a range and average of a 0 for baseline 2. For token reinforcement 2, her range was between 0.5 and 6.9, and her average consisted of 3.2. Lastly, we have my graph. We have baseline 1, then intervention 1, baseline 2, and intervention 2. At the bottom, we can see the range and average. So the baseline range was 5.01 to 5.40 with an average of a 5.2. The token reinforcement, which was the first intervention, was a range of a 5.1 to 6 and an average of a 5.6. Baseline 2 consisted of a range of 0 and an average of 0 as well. Token reinforcement 2, which was the second and last intervention in our project, was a range of a 5 to a 6 and an average of a 5.2. So those were the results for our presentation, for our replication project. The purpose of our study was to replicate the behavior change article we selected by Krantz, Mitzelberg, and Valbuena in 2006 to determine if utilizing a token economy would increase walking distance. Our results were very consistent with the findings. The implementation of the token reinforcement system helped to motivate all participants to increase walking distance. We determined that the token reinforcement system was effective in motivating the increased walking distance. The distance walked during the intervention phases generally increased compared to the baseline phases. As far as limitations, a small sample size would be one limitation in our study. As opposed to the study replicated, we only had 3 participants. Gender would be another limitation, for we were all only girls. And in the study, they had both genders, male and female. Another limitation was the lack of maintenance data after the second intervention in order to determine the efficacy of the study. In comparison to the study that we replicated, we engaged in, the treadmill was used instead of outdoors, and also we used the treadmill screen to track our distance instead of a sports van or sensor like in the replicated project. Another limitation in our study consisted of the location. Participants, although in the same time zone, were not able to engage in physical activity at the same time and same location like in the study. Instead, we were done at different times and not at the exact time, either at a local gym treadmill or the treadmills at home. Lastly, our last limitation for our project was that one of the participants was used a 2.5 distance for the baseline, and then the rest of it were a 3.0, so maybe that would interfere with that a little bit too. And that would be it for our conclusion.
Thanks for watching.